Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Summer Getaway 2021 with NFLPA. We are really excited to be with you today. My name is Tim Dix, and I represent Manpower Group and Right Management Consultants. And we have Ken Garron from the Entrepreneur Option, one of our trusted partners to help folks if they're looking for franchising or buying an existing business. So today we're going to be talking with you about any type of entrepreneurial endeavor, and we look forward to sharing some information with you. We'd love to connect with you after this session is over. So anything we can do to help you, even if you're just kind of kicking the tires on something or thinking about doing something, maybe some of you have already done something, and we'd love to have a conversation around that. We're here to help you any way we possibly can. So next slide, please. And we're going to be looking at various options here today. So next slide, and we will start the roll. So there really are a lot of different options here. You can start an existing or brand new business. You can buy an existing business. You can get into franchising. One of the things that we see when we're working with a lot of NFL players, they want to start a nonprofit or a foundation in some way. Now that could be things like, I just want to lend my name. I'm not really interested in being in the day-to-day operation of that. But it could also mean I'm looking to write a big check. It can mean I want to be actively involved. We love to help people who are doing those types of things. And many of us, myself included, actually, have things that go on in our lifetime that cause us to maybe rethink some of our priorities. My wife passed away from breast cancer a little over 4 years ago. I set up a nonprofit in her honor and her name, and we are trying to help caregivers as they are going through that challenge in their life. But many of the players that we've worked with may have grown up where they were going to boys and girls clubs and got a lot of coaching there, worked with a lot of people and really are doing some things where they want to now give back in their local communities like that. They have situations like mine where they may have lost a mom or a spouse to some type of sickness. But there are a lot of different things you could do in that whole nonprofit foundation world that absolutely would be considered entrepreneurial. One of the ones that we were a little bit surprised as we work with some of our NFL players was consulting and contracting. And we'll look at that in a little bit of depth here in just a minute. But there are many players after having played in the league, they come out, they take a regular corporate job. They've built this great background of experience. They've got an educational background, or maybe they went to school and after they played in the league, they want to kind of parlay their experience in the classroom into a more corporate environment. Consulting and contracting is actually a great way to go. And then there are actually some hybrid opportunities, and we'll discuss some of those as well as we go through the session this afternoon. So next slide, please. So now starting a business, that one would be one where I would look at that and I would tell you, I could see that from both ways. If you have a great business idea, wonderful. We'd love to help you do that. Ken and I both work with people who are trying to start something like that. In the cases of those, though, you are starting from scratch. So you're building from zero, and those are often very hard to do. So some of the things that we recommend is, first of all, do a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Are there any opportunities that you see out there that you may want to capitalize on? Are there any threats that may be preventing you from doing it? One of the things that I think about nowadays, you want to have a business that's Amazon proof. If Jeff Bezos decides he wants to go out and start that same type of business or buy a business that's similar to what you're getting ready to start, can he take you down day one? So you have to look at the threats that might be out there. You have to look at your own personal weaknesses and what your strengths are, and then make some determinations. There may be better ideas. I think Ken will actually show you some of those here in just a few minutes, because everything basically nowadays has been franchised in some way. Do you have a product to offer? Do you have a service that you want to provide? Is this venture all about money? These are great questions that you need to be asking yourself. Certainly, if you go into a nonprofit or foundation, while you may want to draw a salary off of that, that still may not be the ultimate way that you want to do this. You may want to be doing the foundation simply to give back in some shape, form, or fashion. We recently finished a cohort where we had about 30 former NFL players who had either started a business or had a business idea that they were looking to explore. We had one gentleman who was looking to start the first owned African-American NASCAR team. And he was going to start in the truck series and the modified series and not in the full-blown NASCAR. But he's been working with people like Joe Gibbs of Joe Gibbs Racing, and of course, the former Washington football team's head coach, won a few Super Bowls there. He is looking to help them get started. Another person had a business where he started an IT business. After his playing career was over, he went back and has started an IT business. He's starting to do a lot of things with the federal government. He's working on contracts where they have either minority set-asides or things like that, where he can at least open the door and get his foot in the door and start to grow that business. And now he's starting to look at other opportunities as well. We had two gentlemen who started a pro recovery franchise, or it could actually turn into a franchise one day. Right now it's a single unit, but they are looking at the possibility of franchising this model. And even if you go to a place like a Gold's Gym, you would come in here and you would go through a cryo chamber. You could get cupping done. You could get a massage after you had your workout at the gym, but they are called Pro Recovery. There were two former players who had gotten together after their careers were over. So do you have an idea like that? If you do, fantastic. We would love to maybe chat with you offline and see if we can help you really embellish that idea and grow that thing. Next slide, please. Now, one that, as we've worked, again, Ken and I both have worked with a number of NFL players down through the years. But one thing that initially we didn't see as maybe a real opportunity, and we didn't focus on it that much. But as we went along, we realized, wow, some of the players, whether they played in the league a very short period of time or whether they played 15 years, after they got out, they still had a long period of time that they had to work. Many of them took a corporate job, had done very well in a corporate environment, but were now ready to kind of branch out on their own, use some of the expertise that they had gotten in the corporate world, and go in and consult with companies or contract in some way. So next slide. So we wanted to give you just a few things to think of in terms of that. If you have a background that might lead you toward consulting or contracting in some way, one of the major advantages to consulting, you really don't have to have a lot of cash to get involved in that. You can have certainly a very open schedule. If you want to go play golf this afternoon, you certainly can do that. You can come and go as you please because you are your own boss and you can do things your way. You certainly have an unlimited income potential. It really, again, depends on how much you want to work. Most of the people that I work with who are looking to do something in the consulting field, well, actually, they will have chunked out what they want to do. I only want to work part-time. I'm in my mid-50s now. I really don't care to work full-time, but I want to find 2 or 3 good contracts, and I want to work 20 hours or have 20 billable hours a week. Some people want to work full-time. But again, that's one of the beauties of consulting. You are totally in charge, and that is something that you can decide as what your personal needs might be. Now, next slide, please. There are definitely some disadvantages too. And you notice there are as many, or if not more, disadvantages. Very long hours. You know, one of the things that I've learned personally as a consultant, I've done a lot of consulting in my career. I actually have an S corporation, have an LLC, have a 501c nonprofit. So I have a number of different entities that I'm doing various things through as an entrepreneur. But one thing that I've learned personally, having done this for over 20 years now, the hours, you're really never off. You know, unfortunately, I have an office in the house, like I guess most of us do now in the age of COVID. But that it's hard to check out. It's hard to close that door and walk away from that work. And you can always be there doing something. It seems to never go away. Unfortunately, it's a high failure rate. That's one of the reasons Ken and I do what we do. We try to help entrepreneurs to make sure that we can dramatically lower what that failure rate might look like. And there's certainly things that you can do. We don't have time to get into those in our brief time here today, but there are definitely things you can implement in your business to lower that failure rate. It generally takes a while to make up whatever monies you were making before. If you're walking out of a corporate job and you're looking to now do something entrepreneurial as a consultant or a contractor, it does take a while to replace that former salary. Now, where we talked about having only one boss, yourself, and if you decide to go play golf this afternoon, fine. Actually, you have more bosses. If you had a corporate job, I have an NFL player right now who has been with ADT for 20 years, and he's got a great job in the IT world for them down in the Atlanta area. Well, you know, we've talked a couple of times about doing something entrepreneurial and maybe using that expertise that he's gotten over 20 years' time and moving into more of a consulting role. Well, if that happens, he's probably going to have to pick up 3 or 4 clients in order to replace his old salary. Well, if he does that, now that means I have 3 or 4 bosses, not just me. So even though we say you have one boss, technically you're going to have a lot more. The more customers you have, the more bosses you have. Next slide, please. But if you are thinking about using your background and experience, now is a great time to do it. Currently, the trends are absolutely moving in the direction of a consultant. Over the next 10 to 20 years, they're saying that up to 70% of the workforce will be non-traditional, non-W-2'd, if you know the term. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, though, the whole area of consulting is projected to grow it's supposed to grow anyway at twice the rate of all other occupations over the next 5 or 6 years. So it is a great time to maybe look at that. The world is moving away from traditional W-2 benefited jobs to where you're responsible for your benefits. You're responsible for the things that you do, and you can make, again, whatever money you want to make, but there's some downside risks there. Next slide, please. But the trends are working to your advantage. The bigger companies, the biggest companies that are out there in this whole franchising or consulting world make up less than 30% of all revenues. And the average consulting firm has fewer than 10 employees, and they have revenues of less than $1 million. So that's everybody on this call. Every single person who is looking to do something in the consulting world is typically going to start out as a one-man shop or a two-man shop. They're typically going to have billables of less than $1 million. So that's right in line with what the trends are in this day and age. So I would absolutely, if you have that background, look at consulting or contracting as a potential way to go. Next slide, please. Now, one of the really cool things in this day and age, do you have a hybrid an idea like that? There are 2 or 3 that I want to give you as a quick example here. One that I'm sure you know very well with Chris Paul and the State Farm commercials. Here we are in the NBA Finals, and you see a lot of State Farm commercials with Chris Paul. State Farm is actually a hybrid entrepreneurial idea. If you decide you want to get into a State Farm, they can help you get set up. They will find a territory that they are trying to grow. They will bring you in. They will get you set up. They'll pay you a salary. They'll help pay for some administrative staff. What they're really looking for you to do, though, is to grow a book of business for them. So if you do that, if you decide to get out of that, this is not a business like Ken will be telling you about here in just a second. This is a business that's ultimately going to go back to State Farm. So while you can make really good money during your time working with them, ultimately they own that business and they're going to take it back over. Chick-fil-A is another example of that. Now, I love Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, it's almost like winning a lottery to get one of the tickets to open a Chick-fil-A. But Chick-fil-A is a very low cost of entry to get into, but it's not like a franchise in the sense that once you grow that business and you can make yourself a very nice living while you're doing it, at some point in time, you're going to decide to get out of that thing. Chick-fil-A is going to take that back over. Now, we've worked with some companies like there's an organization called CUNA, the Credit Union National Association. And what they do is they are smaller credit unions. They're all over the United States, in every state, most communities, and they are looking for financial planners and folks such as that to come into their organization and help grow their book of business. They are looking for former NFL players specifically because you bring something to the table that they don't often have. You are in the community that they are in, so they're not going to relocate you. You don't want to be relocated. They are looking to grow in those areas that they haven't really capitalized on in the past. So they're willing to train you, help you get your Series 7 or Series 65 license. They're willing to help you out in that regard to get everything that you need to be successful. They're going to give you an office. They're going to give you everything to succeed. However, if you decide, hey, I've done all I can do here in the credit union and I want to go out and hang out my own shingle, you unfortunately don't get to take that book of business with you. So again, they keep that, but you made a nice living during that period of time. So I'd encourage you to look at some hybrid ideas in addition to the possibility of starting your own business and also looking at the possibility of consulting. Now, one question here before I turn it over to Ken. I see here, has anyone dabbled or worked in the consulting world already? Actually, I'm currently working with 2 or 3 people who are actively working to start that and grow that business. We have just started working to get their LLC set up, their limited liability company, which is going to help them to be able to protect themselves legally, we won't get into that, don't have time to do that today, but we help them get their legal entity set up. They already have some clients that they know they want to call on. And what I'm trying to help them do is to grow that beyond that. So we want to try to fill in the gap. So if they tell me I'm trying to work and bill out 40 hours a week, right now they're only able to fill about half of that. So what I'm trying to do now is help them fill the other 20 hours so that they've got a full book of business as far as consulting is concerned. But yes, we do have some former NFL players who are dabbling in that whole world of consulting and contracting right now. And again, happy to have that conversation. Ken and I both will give you our contact information before we finish this session here today. But with that, I'm going to hand this off here to Ken Garron. Ken is the president and owner of a company called the Entrepreneur Option. Ken and I have worked together for a number of years right now, and he's been in the corporate world. He's bought businesses, he's sold businesses, he's had franchises. If anybody knows the whole world of buying a business or franchising, Ken is the man. And so you're very fortunate to have Ken here to help you today. So Ken, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. Next slide, please. All right, so digging in a little here on buying a franchise. You know, everyone thinks of franchise and you think of the big names, right? The McDonald's, the Subways, the Dunkin' Donuts. But there's a lot of different things out there that could be the right fit for, you, and especially for a lot of people as their first endeavor in entrepreneurship. Next slide. So some of the advantages of going with the franchise. What you're buying into is a proven system. So they really call it a business in a box, because what they're doing is they're taking people that have no experience in a given industry and teaching them how to run a business and be successful. So they have to provide you with that training. They have to provide you with the support to be successful during the long term. From your standpoint, prior to getting into a franchise, you can do a lot of free research on the front end to find out if it's right for you, because franchisors provide you with a document called a franchise disclosure document. It's really a review, and sort of it levels the playing field for everyone coming in, and it gives you an insight into what you're signing on for before you ever get involved. Next slide. So advantages and disadvantages. So we talk about those advantages of you're getting that system, you're getting the proven, you're getting the training. On a disadvantage side, well, you're going to pay for that, right? You pay for a license fee up front. Typically a one-time fee that you pay ranges anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 for a single territory. I've seen several now that have gone, people are doing multiple territories or big regions. You can spend $500,000 just on a franchise fee. Again, depending on what you're looking to do. One of the other disadvantages, royalty payments. Royalty payments typically are 6 to 8% of your monthly gross revenue. So if you break that down, you have a business that's maybe doing $1 million a year in revenue, you might be paying $60,000 to $80,000 a year back to the franchisor before you ever take a paycheck, right? That comes right off the top. So you have to really weigh it out and figure out, well, what do you get for that, right? Are they providing you with enough support that maybe you need less employees, or maybe that being part of that system is giving you enough buying power so you're able to buy products and have a much higher profit margin than you would if you're out on your own? Maybe so, maybe not. But those are the kind of things you have to weigh out, figure out, well, what do you really get for the money you're paying back to them? A couple other disadvantages, the restrictions. You sign up for a franchise, they want you to come in and do it their way. So some people can actually be too entrepreneurial to get into a franchise. If you don't buy a McDonald's and then decide you want to sell your grandmother's chocolate chip cookies and just set them up on the counter, right? Doing something like that could cause you to lose your franchise. It could also cause a lawsuit if your grandmother's secret ingredient is peanut butter and it's not labeled properly. So when you buy into a franchise, you're buying into a system. You want to check that system out, and then your role is to follow that system. Next slide, please. Majority of your franchises are going to be less than a $250,000 investment. You'll see, obviously, there are things you can go upwards of $500,000 or more. Next slide. Scope of businesses. So when you look at the different types of franchises out there, as I mentioned, most people think of the McDonald's, the Subways, and things like that. Those fall into the inbound retail category. They're all about the location. They tend to cost more because you're paying for that high-priced real estate. You might have a lot of inventory, but your role is to run that business and your customers are coming to you. When you move across this scope, you'll see things in outbound retail where you have a location, but it's not all about that location bringing in the business. So now the role of the owner really changes. And so your role now is to get out there and promote that business, get out and seek out referral sources and do some promoting, get in front of potential customers and let them know that you have a business and try to drive some of that business back to your location. Moving across a little more, you'll see things in the marketing driven arena where it's not really about your location at all. And a lot of these fall into what you would call your service industries, things like maid service or handymans, painting businesses, things where you see those businesses out there all the time, the trucks that are trimming the trees in your neighbor's yard, but you don't really know where the location of that business is. So they're promoting it through marketing, through their yard signs when they're doing work, through their names and logos on their trucks or vans. And that's how you get the word of mouth out there. And then again, it's maybe the internet advertising, maybe direct mailers, but it works out well for people that don't want to go out and do the hardcore sales, but don't want to have the higher cost of your inbound retail. Then the last section here is what we call outbound service and sales. And these are for people that like to go out and do the business development, like to get in front of their customers, don't want to be sitting in an office or a location all day, really want to go out and drive the business by just getting out and working referral sources. These can be great opportunities, can be much lower cost because you can be working out of your home. But again, it's got to be the right fit for your personality type and make sure that it's something that you're going to want to get up and do every day. Next slide. Categories. If you look through this list, just kind of look over, everybody thinks of the food and retail, a lot of things in automotive, childcare, tutoring services, things like that. Look at a long list of things in personal services and business services, maybe things that you would never think of in franchising, like business coaching or consulting, things like staffing or senior care. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there. And the key really is figuring out which one is the best fit for you and which one is going to put you in the role as the owner of that business that you're going to enjoy getting up and doing every day. Next slide. So I see that someone has a question here about semi-absentee businesses. And I really wanted to get to this slide to talk about it because what you're going to see here is this table of contents covers the same 23 items, whether it's a senior care franchise or a McDonald's franchise. By law, they have to cover these items. If you look at item 15, it talks about your obligation to participate in the actual operation of the franchise business. So what does all that mean? Well, it means, can you run it semi-absentee? Can you run it with that half hands-off approach and put a manager in there to run the day-to-day business? So certain franchises allow you to do that and certain ones do not, but they have to tell you right in this document. Again, so yes, we work with a lot of companies that do that. There are many that are set up to be run with a manager in place from day one. Other things you're going to see in this document, 5, 6, and 7, all about your fees, how much you're paying to get into the business, that franchise fee I talked about, all of your other fees, what is your total initial investment going to be? And that's usually going to be a range. It could be, 80 to 120,000, or it could be 200,000 to 400,000. And a lot of it depends on the type of business and where you're going to open that business. Scrolling down, big one that ever pops out to everybody is the earnings claim, item 19. This gives you an idea of how much money you can make in the business. But what they never do is say, if you buy this business, you're going to make $250,000 a year. They give you just enough information to be dangerous. They give you sort of pieces of the puzzle, and that's really all it is. And then it's up to you to collect the rest of the information to make sure that this is the opportunity that's going to be the best fit for you. If you look at item 20, I highlight that one, the list of franchise outlets. Next slide, please. So that list of franchise outlets is your opportunity to reach out and talk to individual franchise owners. They give you the names, addresses, emails, phone numbers of everyone that's in that system. So it allows you to do some, what we call validation, call some existing owners, make sure that they're happy with their investment, find out how long it takes them to break even, and collect that information you need to put together a pro forma to figure out if this business is going to be able to provide you with the income that you're looking for. Tim, are you going to jump in on buying a business, or you want to keep going on this?
No, I'll let you do that. I'll let you handle it. All right. You're rolling.
All right, here we go. All right, so switching gears from franchising to buying a business, some great opportunities out there in this direction as well. It could be a really good time to do this because the average age of the business owner that we're seeing right now is 65. Over 4 million of those business owners are going to be looking for an exit over the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Current interest rates are low. We're seeing things 6-7% with SBA loans. And of course, if you're doing things with home equity, you're going to get a much better rate than that. So it's going to be a great time to buy an existing business. Next slide. Some of the big advantages to go in this direction. Well, number one, you're reducing the risk of a startup because you're buying into something that's already proven. You might have a business out there that's been around for 10, 15 years or more, already generating income, proven concept in place, generating that cash flow from day one, which allows you to take an immediate paycheck, which is really the biggest reason people go this way, right? You're not going through that startup phase and that ramp up time of the first year or two that's really lean. You're not taking any money out. You're buying into something with that existing cash flow and able to continue to not only pay yourself an income, but if you structure the deal properly, use the income from the business to pay off the business over a 10-year term if you roll through the SBA loans. We also work to get sellers to assist with financing these deals because it's a great way to keep them interested in your success, right? If you still owe them money on that business, they're going to want to make sure that they're there when you have an issue or you have a phone call, you need to get some information from them. A lot easier to reach when you owe money. The other thing is it's a lot easier to get financing for these types of business because, again, you're going to be doing a look back on the tax returns of the last 3 to 5 years to show there's a proven income stream here that can be used to pay off the business and pay you to cover your lifestyle. Next slide. On a disadvantaged side, of course, got to look at those as well because buying a business like this is going to be expensive, right? If you go out and buy a business that's making $300,000-$400,000 a year, these are going to sell for 3 to 4 times the annual owner benefit. So again, you might be looking at a business that sells for $1.2 million to $1.5 million. They can be hard to find because when you have a business like that, what do most people do? Well, a lot of times they'll bring in family, hand it off to their kids, maybe hire a manager and just let the manager continue to run the business. And then maybe you're not collecting as much money, but you're still collecting. Also, you got to look for what are the hidden seller motives and are they going to be around to train you and support you during the long term? And that's where, again, coming back to that seller financing, it's really good to keep them close. Next slide.
And I'll take it from there, Ken.
All right, I'm going to swing it back to Tim. He's going to talk to you about financial considerations.
Awesome. So I get to talk about the nasty stuff, things you need to be thinking about before you jump into this too much. Before I go into that, I want to jump back to Corey had asked that question about being absentee owner, semi-absentee owner. People will ask me questions all the time about franchising, buying a business, or the consulting, starting a business thing. In my honest personal opinion, I think if you can find the right opportunity and buy an existing business, you immediately, if you find the right one and you get somebody that can help you do the proper due diligence, and that's again what Ken does for a living every day, you can find a really good business that's kicking off the kind of money that you need to be putting in your pocket. Now, I don't think there's any such thing as a total absent business. That's one that you are almost guaranteed to be out of business before too long. But as Ken just said, if you find a business where you can put a manager in there, or you buy businesses that has a manager in place that they can be there and allow you to be semi-absentee, that's actually a really interesting way to potentially go. And I think you probably have a better chance of success buying an existing business, being a semi-absentee owner, but never an absentee owner. But Ken works with people all the time, all day long with franchising or buying a business. And he'll give you his contact information here in the next few minutes. And we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to chat with us offline, and anything we can do to help you, we certainly want to be able to do that. But one of the things, not to scare you too bad, but we want you to think about the financial considerations. Now, you know, when I tell people, and I'm working with a lot of former NFL players, people ask all kinds of questions, and I enjoy it too, and I know Ken does as well. But, you know, some people didn't play very long at all. I work very closely with Ricky Prohl. Many of you may know Ricky. He played 17 years in the league. He was the Carolina Panthers wide receiver coach for a few years. He has a son on the Viking squad right now. He's got another son who's I believe he's on the 49ers team right now. But Ricky, he told me one time he has a beautiful facility here in Greensboro, North Carolina called Prolific Park. And it's doing extremely well. My son actually works part-time during the summer for Ricky. But, you know, Ricky never signed that big contract. He said, I signed 17 one-year contracts. He said, I wish I'd been able to just write a check and open the park and not have to worry about banks and worry about all of the other stuff that comes along with that. But all of you may not be in that particular situation, just like Ricky wasn't. Some of you may be. But I want you looking and thinking about a few things financially. And I'm going to use my own personal example as I kind of explain this. First question you need to ask yourself is, how long are you willing to live on your savings or whatever monies you have set aside to do this entrepreneurial endeavor? And I don't care if it's a franchise, buying a business, starting one from scratch, which could be very costly because you are truly starting from scratch, or consulting, as we said a few minutes ago, doesn't cost a lot to get in there, but you still got to eat. You still got a mortgage you have to pay. You have things you have to do. And as you're growing that business slowly but surely, you're probably going to have to use other funds to take care of things like the mortgage. So are you willing to burn through those savings in order to make that happen? Next question that you would ask yourself is, how deep in debt are you willing to go? Now, I'm going to tell you my little horror story. I was in corporate America for a number of years. I had my last job in corporate America. I spent 6 or 7 years in international sales. My territory was anything outside of the United States. I had a great gig, great boss, made good money, got to see the world on somebody else's nickel. But my company was actually bought by an Italian company. When they came in, they decided they didn't need anybody doing their thing. They had a full sales force all over the world. They didn't need some dude in Greensboro, North Carolina, going all over creation on their behalf. So they whacked me. So I'm standing out front of my old company, and I've been doing it for a long time. And I had a small child at the time, and I knew I needed to get off the road. I knew I needed to do something, and I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but didn't think about it. I didn't have anybody like Ken or myself now to be able to hold my hand and guide me through that. So I just immediately started a company called Global Resources Limited. It's an S corporation. It's still around to this day by the grace of God, but sometimes I wonder how. But I'll never forget, as I started that business, many times in spite of myself, I was getting business. I had an opportunity to have an order that was over $100,000 that I got with Haynes Hosiery, the old Sara Lee Corporation back in the day. I'll never forget the day I got that purchase order from them and how excited I was. But I also had set up my company in a way that was pretty boneheaded. I had set it up to where I had to pay all of my people along the way. So I had a manufacturer in Seoul, Korea, who was manufacturing the product for me. I had to pay him before he would ship the product. Then if that boat went down at sea, I had to pay the freight forwarder to get it to the United States. So if anything happens en route, I'm toast. Then I had to pay the duty, which was a 14.9% duty just to get it inside of the United States. And then I had to ship it to the company, in this case, Sara Lee, had to ship it to their front door. If anything screwed up along the way, I was toast. But I was taking money out of savings accounts. I was taking money off of credit cards. I was doing some stupid things in order to get started. And if anything screwed up along the way, I was toast. And I didn't make my money until the back end. So Sara Lee writes me a check, and I've now paid off everybody I have to pay off, and the profit that's left over is mine. But you need to have somebody to kind of hold your hand and guide you in that standpoint. But you need to ask yourself legitimately those types of questions. How long are you willing to live on your savings? How deep in debt are you willing to go? Do you believe in the idea enough? Or in the case of a franchise, you've got the FDD, you've got the proven track record. Now, nobody says, and Ken and I both have seen people like this, they'll buy, and I'm making this up, this is not an actual case, but they'll buy something like a McDonald's and decide they don't like the way the Big Mac secret sauce tastes and they want to take it off. Well, you're screwing up the model right there. First of all, I don't think McDonald's would let you do that, but if you did. So if you're getting into a business where you're going to try to do it differently, you're in trouble. So you want to make sure that you sit down and you go through this logically. You want to make sure that if you're buying into something like that, that you are following the model. You want to make sure if you're starting from something from scratch, you have thought through, what does my P&L look like? How long is it going to take me to be able to start pulling out money out of this? And at what point in time? But you need to honestly ask yourself and sit down with somebody like Ken or me, and let's talk through those things. Another major thing that you have to look at, especially if you're consulting, especially if you're franchising. Now, you may be able to get some insurance through some of the organizations in that world, but if you're buying an existing business, you're going to have to find health insurance. You have to cover yourself, and it ain't cheap. You know that if you've gone out on the open market and looked for it. And I don't care if you go through Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. I don't care if you go out and get private insurance. That is not cheap. Now, there are certainly, if you get yourself a really good CPA, you get you somebody who can help hold down what your actual salary is. There are ways to get set asides to be able to help you underwrite that and pay for that insurance. But regardless, it is going to be expensive, and it's something you need to look at. Are you better off getting a job? Are you better off keeping that job you currently have and keeping that benefit package that you have with that? If you're willing to step out. Now, Ken and I are all in on being entrepreneurs. We have both been entrepreneurs for over 20 years. So we're all in for this entrepreneurial thing, but you do need to look at that because it's a real issue. Now, one other thing I will tell you, this is one that kind of bit me too. Now, I was a little bit smarter in this regard, but have you set your lines of credit up in advance? Now, if you've been working in a corporate job, and I'm sure many of you on this call right now have been working a corporate job, maybe you just ended your playing career and just took your first job outside of the NFL, which is great. Maybe some of you have been out for a while and then been working a job for a long time, but now you're kind of kicking the tires on something entrepreneurial. If you go in and let's just say, for example, you've been working for IBM for the last 10 years, and you go in and say, I've been working with IBM for 10 years, or I've got this great idea and I've been in business 10 days, which one of those two guys are you going to loan money to? So the sooner you can go into the bank and sit down and get those lines of credit set up, and as Ken mentioned a few minutes ago, the Small Business Administration, the SBA, and you can check out their website at sba.gov, G-O-V. That's a great place to look. We can help you find some resources. We actually have some handouts that you have that are downloadable that have many different links to many different websites. And we talk about a lot of different things from marketing to operations to things like credit. So anything that you can do to get that done in advance. And nobody says you have to go out and get a line of credit on your home. If you do that, not a bad idea. It's actually where most of us have the majority of our equity is in our homes, where we have the most money set aside that we could tap into. Now, I would never want you to go out and tap into that and do anything that jeopardizes your home. But if you got that line of credit set up and it's there and available and you can tap into it as you start this business or grow this business or buy this franchise, doing that earlier rather than waiting would be a very smart thing that you should do. And then the other financial thing, what would happen if, God forbid, you couldn't run this business? You know, if you get into a business and you get hurt, you're disabled in some way, something happens. Do you have key man insurance to protect you and your family? Do you have an exit strategy? It doesn't have to mean a bad thing necessarily. If you decide you want to sell the business, the kids aren't interested, you know, what is your exit strategy going to look like? But to have that in place while you're trying to grow that, you do need to look at protection in terms of disability insurance, general liability type insurance. If you're doing consulting work, you're probably going to have something like errors and emissions insurance to protect you. Or if you get hurt and can't deliver on what you are trying to deliver for your client, they're going to want to know, all right, how are we going to work this thing out? So you need to protect yourself. So if something bad does happen, you are there and able to cover that. So a couple of questions here. What are some skills that are a must-have when trying to start your own business? That's a great question. So, you know, we have some assessments, and Ken is going to make available to you an assessment that we would ask each of you to take a look at. And it's looking at a lot of different pieces of information. I have some additional assessments that I would like you to potentially take and see if you kind of have what it takes to do your own thing. Now, you want to have the family support. So, you know, if you got a wife and kids and the family's not on board with you deciding to plunk down $75,000 for a franchise, you're in trouble already. So part of the assessment looks at, is the family supportive? Some of it looks at what is your, you know, what are your weak spots? Are there things that make you feel like I may not have what it takes to do this? So you don't necessarily, I had a lady one time call me almost in tears because she completed one of our assessments and she scored very low on that. Well, what that means to me is not that you can't be a successful entrepreneur. What that really means to me is you probably do need a franchise. One of the things that we've always felt with our NFL players that we work with is that they are so used to a system. You know, Coach Belichick told you when to get up, when to eat breakfast, when to practice, when to play. You know, everything was structured. That's one of the beauties of the FDD. And that's one of the beauties of a franchise is when you get into that thing, you know everything there is to know, good, bad, and ugly, who succeeded, who failed. You got numbers you can call, you can do your due diligence. If you run out of questions, Ken can give you a whole new series of questions. But that doesn't mean if you score low on one of our assessments, you can't be an entrepreneur. You just need to have that business plan that's already been constructed for you. I would say that you have to have some pretty good marketing savvy. And again, we've got some great resources to help you. We actually have a class that you can take and we can get you involved in called Marketing Your Business. But I think you have to have a little bit of marketing savvy. You have to have a little bit of operational experience. Now, I'm not saying that you'd have to know about SAP systems and things like that. But if I can find somebody that's got that passion to do their thing, I can direct you to many resources where you can ask your questions. And I'd much rather you ask those questions up front rather than get into this thing and say, oh my God, what have I done? Two great resources for you just very quickly. And they're available in all 50 states, so you can find one in your community. There's an organization called SCORE.org. If you go to SCORE, that stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And they have people in your community that can kind of help you, that you can sit down with one-on-one. You can talk about your business idea. On their website, they actually have a free business plan template that you can download and start playing with. I'm more than happy to look at that with you and kind of talk through that with you if you think that might help you. But really starting to sit down and commit some of this to paper, I think is a very good idea. I think it's a skill that you may not know very well. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. You know, you can just simply put down, I think here's what I want to do. Here's who I think my customers are. Going back to that first slide we showed you today, what are some of your strengths and weaknesses? What are some of the opportunities maybe that you see out there? One of the ones I'll tell you that I've become very involved in here over the last month, my dad has been very sick, and we have seen how hard it is to get people to be able to come into the home. I know Ken has been involved for a long time with a franchise called Always Best Care, which is a senior living type thing. That is an industry that is going to, in my humble opinion, continue to grow dramatically. Is that an opportunity you see in your backyard? If you complete that SWOT analysis on yourself and then look at a business plan, I think they would be two great things to help you. And what's one, and Ken, you jump in right here, feel free. What's your one piece of advice for everyone considering starting their own business?
Do a lot of research. Don't jump into something too soon. Make sure you really understand the role of the owner, what's going to be expected of you, and what you're going to need to do to succeed.
And you know what? I could not agree more. And I can, and you guys know them. You played with them. I've worked with them, where you hear the horror stories. I had one gentleman that I was working with, former NFL player, made about $90 million in his playing career. But he had a buddy that wanted to get into real estate, blew $1 million. Had a buddy that wanted to start a car dealership, blew $1 million. Do your homework, do your research. Make sure you're doing the right thing for you and your family, not for any hangers on, not for any buddies of yours. Do your homework, and I think you'll be much better suited for success, and then and capitalize on people like Ken and me to try to help you. Next slide, please. I love this slide, and this is one that everybody on this call can fully get and understand. Successful people aren't born that way. They become successful by establishing the habit of doing things unsuccessful people don't like to do. The successful people don't always like to do these things themselves. They just get on and do them. And that's one of the things every NFL player I have ever spoken with or worked with will pretty much say the same thing. I was one of the top 1% of the top 1%. You are the elite of the elite. And one of the main reasons is not because you were necessarily bigger and stronger, it's because you worked your tail off and you did things that other people weren't willing to commit to. And so I think this is the avenue. The world is moving toward entrepreneurship in a way that I have never seen in all of my years. And I would encourage you to take a look at least kicking the tires on it. Nobody says you have to write a check. Nobody says you have to do anything. But if you believe my earlier slide that 70% of the world is going to be non-traditional, non-W-2'd over the next 10 to 20 years, now is the absolute perfect time to look at doing something on your own. And more than anything else, being in control of your own destiny. Next slide, please. We're going to leave you with these 10 questions to ask yourself. And we obviously don't have time to do that. We're wrapping up here. But what do you want out of business ownership? What are the things that you are trying to get out of that? Is it that pat yourself on the back and say, I started my own S corporation or LLC? If it is, great. But are you looking to make money out of it? Are you looking to maybe set up that foundation, or are you trying to give back to others? What are you personally trying to get out of this? Does your family support you? Again, I have a wonderful assessment that you can take, and I would encourage your spouse or significant other to take that with you. You will quickly realize, hey, I should be doing this or I should not be doing this based on things other than your own feelings, because all of us probably would like the idea of doing our thing. Where do you want your business? You know, are you looking to do it right there where you're sitting right now? Or are you looking to relocate halfway across the country? You need to ask yourself that. What are your transferable skills? I've worked with so many NFL players and helped them with their resumes and get them spit shine. It's pretty remarkable what skills you guys have. And I would encourage you to look at some of your playing skills and see if you can incorporate those into what you're looking to do next. How much do you want to invest? Are you comfortable taking on that debt we talked about? How soon do you need to replace your income? We've kind of looked at all of those things. If you like to follow a system, nothing better than doing the franchise. Absolutely nothing better. And do you want to be responsible for all of it, or do you want to be that semi-absentee owner? And how are you going to go about getting your customers, just like Ken was telling you earlier? Last slide, please. I want you to make sure that you take a look, call us, call Ken, email me, call us. We would love to help you any way we can. Guys, best of luck to you in everything that you do.
Good luck. Thanks for joining us.